Putting up. It is 6 a.m. here in Pacific Standard Time. And we have here, I am so excited to welcome none other than my very, very dear friend, Daniela Mandico. I'm so excited. Thank you all, everybody showing the love to Daniela in announcing that we'll be speaking with her today. This is our second episode of Mixed Race Women Speak Up for our Mixed Race Women Collective. If you're a mixed race woman, please join our collective if you want to share your story. And I'm really, really blessed and happy to be speaking with Daniela today. A few things I want to say about Daniela as we get started is that Daniela, I have known her since middle school, growing up in New Jersey, which is super exciting. And shout out to those people watching. If you're watching right now, this is powered by Restream Studio. So you may be watching via YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. Please, drop a comment in the chat. Shout out, say who you are. If you're mixed race, let us know. But we are so excited to welcome Daniela today to talk about her story. She's got a great story. I know her share. I love her and her life and questions and her passions. So without further ado, I love you, Daniela. Daniela I'll let her tell you about herself, but I'm excited to jump into and have her share her mixed race story. Go ahead, Daniela.
Good morning, everyone. Buenos dias. First, I want to say, Amita, thank you for having me and wanting to interview me, bringing a voice to the mixed race community and a platform for us to speak.
Yes. Totally.
I also want to thank everyone for the comments they had on Mita's Facebook post about promoting this interview and all the comments and likes. It really warmed my heart. So por los comentarios, muchas gracias, se los agradezco. So, wow, where do we begin?
Where do we begin?
When you told me you wanted to interview me about being a mixed race woman, I just thought that is so loaded. Like, what is it to be a mixed race woman? That is such a loaded question. I also thought about how that's a conversation that you have with mixed race friends or in a group with other mixed race people, individuals, and that's usually kind of like behind closed doors. And so again, thank you for bringing a platform for individuals who are mixed race.
Of course. By the way, on Monday, November 2nd, at this time, in walking around my apartment complex, talking to Daniela, this idea was born. So Daniela, you continue to be the source of my transformation, of my work. Daniela is someone who has invited me and shared with me so many beautiful ways to personally and professionally grow and develop. And I just want to thank you because everybody watching, like Daniela is such a kind, beautiful, inspiring, open-minded soul. Which is why she's here. And I'm sure her mixed race background may contribute to this, but you are someone who has really continued to stand for our friendship, stand for love in the world amongst and across cultures. You do personally in your life and professionally in your life. And talking to you 11 days ago on the phone, I was like, I want to do this. I want to, who do I want the world to know? And I'm like, it's mixed race women. Like I want to highlight the love and the joy and amplify our voices in our experience, and especially in the, oh my God, the timing with Kamala Harris, like Vice President-elect, like a mixed race woman is in the White House. Like really anything is possible for the mixed race women community. Not that we hopefully didn't already know that, but that's not always what we see. It's not always acknowledged as like a community experience that people connect with. And just for the record, I have felt like for me, when I see you and I talk to you, I'm like, oh, this is like my sister. I don't have a sister. You have a sister, but I never grew up with a sister. And I think, what I'd love to hear from you is like, we both have Puerto Rican backgrounds. I think we happen to connect particularly on that. But because, my dad is from India, you have your Italian American background, like why don't you start us off where you want to start us off, whether it's the beginning, growing up, but like when someone asks you, oh, like, what are you?
Yeah.
Right? Or like, you know, what's your background? Like, how do you feel about that? Like, what goes down?
Yeah, no, I was thinking about, you know, preparing for this interview. Like, when was the first time I realized I was mixed race?
That's a great question. Yeah.
Yeah, but you know, my mom let it really be known, and I was, you know, she would go around saying, "Oh, Daniela, she's Rick Italian. She's Rick Italian," and she would tell people, I know, and I also just
It's
kind
like
of
a ricochet. She's like Rick Italian. In your face. Rick
she's
Italian.
Daniela's Rick Italian. Oh yeah, she's Rick Italian, and she would tell people, and you know, I remember having mixed feelings about that, but you know, she said it with a lot of pride. I don't know if maybe she felt she needed to say it for people to understand that I was a mixed race individual. I'm not sure, but it was, you know, she let it be known that I was Rick Italian, you know, and I was just saying to you too earlier how I wish there was like a different way of saying Puerto Rican and Italian American or Puerto Rican and Italian, because by no means are we such a unique race. There's so many of us Puerto Rican Italians out there.
Wow, where are they at? Puerto Rican. If you're Puerto Rican Italian and you see this, let Daniela know in the chat.
You know, I already know 2 people in our high school, like off the top of my head, who were Puerto Rican Italian. Yeah, but you know, she would say she's Rick Italian, and so I don't remember not being mixed race, right? I'm mixed race, and so her stating it proudly. And then I kind of just went through chronologically, like my different phases in life and how I connected or maybe disconnected from a culture or my culture or heritage or background, and me finding a path or a way to identify myself. But I do remember that my mom attempted to speak with me in Spanish at a very young age. You know, she was like pulling on my hair, and she's probably doing trenzas or moños. And I remember she was just having a normal conversation with me, but in Spanish, and I was just not having it. And I don't really know why I didn't want to speak Spanish. I don't know if I just didn't want to be challenged by the language or,
did it resonate? So like, how old do you think you were how old were you?
5. I was 5. I remember it was like getting ready for like kindergarten or maybe first grade. And we were just at the kitchen table, like eating breakfast, and she was doing my hair. And I just remember she switched it up. She went from English right to Spanish. And I was, again, just not having it. And I don't know why, because then when we go to PR, Puerto Rico, like years, you know, throughout the years, I remember feeling so left out that I didn't know the language. And it's really hard for me not to speak. So, you know.
You know what's so interesting though, and I thank you for sharing that. And I love, again, I'm like, both our moms are Puerto Rican, right? Like we have vibed on that. And it's something, I hear a clear, like a connection to like language being a key that unlocks the culture and the identity, especially as a mixed race woman, you know, to be able to speak the language of a culture in our background really helps us connect in a world where we might feel only half this and half that, right? Like, and what does that look like to feel embraced, accepted, loved, whole, belonging, right? And like, I'm kind of hearing you say that, you know, when you were little, you know, on one hand, like, you know, you were like, wow, what is this with the Spanish stuff? Like, why are you giving me this other language? At what point you grew up, you were born and raised where?
So I was born in Perth Amboy, represent. And then my parents moved to Edison, New Jersey. Yeah.
So and at the same time, it's like, you were like, you know, this Jersey girl, you're getting hairbrush and you're kind of like, Spanish, what? Like, you know, little girl, but really, I know, and I'd love to hear about that too, but your access to Spanish and you learning Spanish and connecting with your Puerto Rican family like, mattered to you, right? Because like, that's, I mean, for you, it sounds like, for me too, it like learning Spanish is a way to like really embrace the Puerto Rican, right? So.
And I'm so grateful that I speak it now, and I will go over the many phases I had with the Spanish language and connecting and what was that about my identity. But I remember just going to PR and not that we went a lot of times, but the few handful times that we did go, I just remember not being able to. I had to be quiet because I really didn't know what what everyone was saying or understand.
You didn't understand or speak, and you were like a kid, and you're like,
Yeah.
My family.
Yeah. I was in San Lorenzo, Puerto Rico, and just, you know, hanging on my grandparents' farm, but not really understanding the language, but really absorbing the culture anyway. I have so many memories.
Yeah. Did you ever feel in those scenarios, and I can relate, like going to Puerto Rico and being like, you know, I would go there kind of, in my case, I would understand a little bit, and I would kind of be like, especially as we grew up through where we met in Herbert Hoover Middle School with Senora Ball and all those other lovely teachers. I started learning Spanish officially in 7th grade. But I remember, so as a young girl and into a teenager, I remember going like, okay, I'm learning the basics. I want to go in there. I'm going to Puerto Rico. Like, I can speak Spanish. And I love my cousins. And those, if you're watching, great. But they were learning English too, right? So when I would come to Puerto Rico, I'd be like, okay, bueno, and they're like, oh, hey, you want to do that? Yeah. Like, we're talking about Nickelodeon, we talk about Disney Channel, and I'm like, okay. My cousins were excited to speak English with their American, with their the cousins from the United States, and that was it. Like, I'd feel a little like, okay, I guess we're gonna, and that's, you know, it fell flat. So I'm wondering, like, you know, that's what it was like for me a little bit at first to really establish my roots, my identity, and grow in my Puerto Rican culture with my family. But they would always see me as the American, and also, oh, you know, she's got, you know, oh, she mezclita, la mezclita, she's that mixed, you know, she's got the mix, she's the Indian. So how was it for you? Did you ever feel like you were acknowledged, called out for your like Italian side, you know, or what? Or was it more just like, oh, like your perceptions, I guess?
Yeah, indirectly, I think. Yeah. You know, I felt all the time that people had seen me as different. And, you know, then all of a sudden the story kind of starts to form, you know, am I Puerto Rican enough? And, you know, you had your experience with Mrs. Ball. She was a ball. She was a ball of energy, and I could tell why she loved speaking Spanish. A veces yo prefiero hablar en español, like, you know, right, to express myself and you know. But in Spanish class in 7th grade, actually, I came home with the form for my mom to sign whether we were going to choose Spanish or French. Now I had already checked off French, so I said, "Here." I did. I checked.
Whoa!
That's what makes me think at 5 I had identity issues already, kind of.
This was 6th grade probably, right? Because you were
like 6th grade. Yeah. We had to choose a language, and I remember filling out that form before I even got home.
You were like, French, please.
French. I'm not gonna learn Spanish. So I came home. Yeah, I came home. I'm like, hey, there's this form you have to sign to choose what language, you know, I'm gonna learn in school. And she looked at the form and saw that I had checked off French. And she looked at me like I had un montón de cabezas.
She was like, pero ¿por qué va a ser que tú vas a aprender? I can't even say. She probably was like, tú ni sabes español, ¿cómo va a ser que tú vas a... And you would have been like, okay.
Well, it was just like that. It was in English, but, you know, she was just, you could tell she was...
What did she say? Yeah.
She was just like, Daniela, like, you're Puerto Rican. You're going to learn Spanish. Why are you going to choose French? And
I didn't learn French, but this was connected to your cultures and to your background, right?
But I think I just remember arguing like, no, but this is what I want to learn. I want to learn French. And there would have been really nothing wrong with that. But I'm sure as for my mom, who's Puerto Rican, it was just, why wouldn't you want to learn your own language? But really, at the end of the day, it was because I just already had this story about myself that I wasn't Puerto Rican enough. And performing in class, really, like 7th grade to 12th grade, Spanish class was really like a terror for me. I remember, especially in middle school, I sunk in my seat. I tried not to sit in the front. But I didn't sit all the way in the back. But, you know, I was just try to be very quiet.
Why do you think that was? That it was so confronting for you to be a half Puerto Rican in a Spanish class in Edison, New Jersey, which for those that may not know, that's our hometown, and it's like super diverse, right? Like, what was so frightening for you about it?
I did not want to be discovered that I was like half Hispanic, still needing to learn Spanish, right? Yeah, like, and like in class, I mean, if I could have said out loud, no, yo soy gringa, yo no soy boricua, like I would have, you know, told the whole class if I could in Spanish. I'm not half Puerto Rican right now. I'm born here, and you know, I didn't want to be discovered. I mean, who even knew if I was half Puerto Rican in class? But I was like, didn't want to be discovered by my classmates. And it was like, even from day one, it was like sort of this, again, like almost like self-bullying, like, you're now in Spanish class. Like, why don't you know Spanish already? Like that I should have already known, like, because I'm half Puerto Rican, that I should have already known Spanish. And then it even turned later on into like, okay, well, you're learning Spanish, like giving myself a little bit more grace. Oh, you're learning Spanish, but
Right.
Why haven't you picked it up already? Why aren't you fluent? Like it was a lot of internal dialogue, you know, and I don't even know how I was going to learn Spanish if I was so not present in what anyone was doing, what we were learning, if it was just the constant terror of just, you know, not being Puerto Rican enough, you know, and just not wanting people to not know that I was half Puerto Rican and didn't speak the language. And by no means was anyone saying to me, like, at home or any, like, directly saying, like, tú tienes que hablar español. ¿Por qué no hablas? No, it was just like my own story I had about myself. I'm not sure where I picked it up along the lines, but it was there.
Wow. I really appreciate you sharing that, because it just sounds like, I think there's such something, you know, the purpose of having these conversations, this series, and talking to women like yourself and having this evolve, is that we get that we're not alone in these experiences. And I can totally, you know, as from one mixed race woman to another, that we happen to have both be half Puerto Rican, grow up in Edison, New Jersey, be going to the same middle school and high school, you know, have these different other 50% other sides. But the point is, I can relate. Like, I can definitely relate until like learning how to kind of negotiate my identity. I wanted that control, right? Like, to be able to, on how I'm perceived, right? So like, I definitely hear you saying that you were like, for you kind of were like I can relate to where it's kind of like, I want to keep this a mystery. I kind of want to, like, it's a little bit like you kind of want to keep it like the card you play close to your chest, right? Like, I feel like there was times that I liked my ambiguity, and I think sometimes I still do, you know, but like, where it's kind of like, okay, what do you think? All right, that's cool. Like, it's very like sly and chill, or like, oh, I'm good. But I realized that sometimes, you know, that was avoiding responsibility. Like, I kind of would just fade into the background, but rather I realized that if that doesn't work, like, and I wonder what you think about it, but I do think that, you know, as we've gotten older, we've learned that there is an opportunity here for whatever God-given reason. We've been born into these bodies. We've been born into with these beautiful parents and these cultures, right? To like own it and represent like what it's like to bring two cultures together, and for some people like myself, two faiths together, right? But like what it is to like own that experience and like connect the dots, because you are half white, right? And you are half Puerto Rican. You are half Latina. You're half white. And so like, you know, I would love to hear, you know, in what you were also preparing to share too, like a little bit more about that, because it sounds to me like you were like, you know, I mean, in most of America, right? There's pretty big, I mean, depending on your town, but there's still a majority of, you know, like, you know, I'm sure in Edison too, there's about 50 or 60% at least folks that were white, and that's great. That's cool, right? But then there's also like, you've got this mix, and like, there was Latinos too. And so I'm wondering about what that was like to like negotiate that. And I know you used to live in Perth Amboy, which it has a lot of Latinos, and then and so like, what do you want to say about that? Because I'm really curious too. As someone who's mixed, you're like mixed white and like a non-white, you know?
Yeah, as I say, being a person of color, and then
right.
Yeah. You know, it's a blessing, yet it's also responsibility. You constantly feel torn. I mean, when we finally got to Edison High School, which is what a couple of middle schools joined together at Edison High School, you know, now I'm seeing more Hispanic students and even, you know, more white students, and you know, not that either of those groups were excluding me, but then look at those groups and say, well, where am I? Where do I belong? What do I go with? And then, as you know, in 11th grade, shout out to Mega Sood and the Sood family.
Yes.
Mega, she has a comment here.
Oh, what did she say? Let's look. You can read it.
She's expressing how, you know, for her daughter, Ziana, she's mixed Gujarati and Punjabi, and only knows Hindi. So, you know.
Yeah. No, and so I'm so excited. I am so excited that actually you saw Mega's comment, and Mega, so much love. Mega, Danielle, and I have all danced together on stage in honoring the Indian culture. I'm seeing, to your point, Mega, to join you in our conversation. Like, even within India, right? There are how many languages are there? If you know Mega, let us know. There's so many languages, right? Like, but to be, and so many cultures, but to be mixed within different states, like cultures, like Gujarati, Punjabi, like, and only knowing one language, like that, that is mixed. That is mixed, right? And so we get it, and we get it, and we send so much love to Ziana too, because we get it. So, so what do you want to say, Daniela, with that too?
So here I'm in 11th grade, and Mega, and again, Sood family, Mascati family, McCann family, families that I can really remember that.
Oh yeah.
Never did I have to question my identity as far as race. But here it's 11th grade. Mega, offers me to participate in the talent show, and we're gonna dance.
Yes. And I was a key component. Look, the Mahive dance.
Yeah. I thoroughly enjoyed dancing on stage with my fellow Desi friends and family. I loved it. Absolutely loved it.
I also feel like I remember, I don't know if you were in this one, I also remember Chalka Ray, like you have to, I said it so.
Yeah, I wish I did Chalka Ray. I was like kind of jealous that I mean.
No, Chalka Ray that was some good stuff. That was some good, we got the Ishq. I feel like we could start listening to all the Sweet 16 repertoire. But anyways, continue.
So here I am. It's 11th and 12th grade. I'm participating in, like, again, dancing in Bollywood songs and Garba going, and I just had such a ball. But then I remember there was a few individuals in high school who were not people of color and actually were Italian American like myself, and just started questioning me. Why are you doing Indian dancing? Why? Why?
Wow.
Yeah, and I was so taken aback. I was, it was so taken aback on so many different levels. First, like, maybe this person is right. Who am I? I'm not Indian, or I'm not Desi. This is not my culture. Like, why am I participating in this? And now I'm realizing that how people are perceiving me. Before, like, not wanting to learn the Spanish language, middle school, the dialogue was really internal. It was about me not feeling enough. But now it's in high school, and people are questioning why I'm even dancing to Bollywood songs. It's something I'm thoroughly enjoying. And now, I'm realizing the perception. And I'm also realizing there are people out there who don't want to participate in other people's culture to enrich their lives. I was taken aback. Like, you don't learn about other people's cultures to enhance your life.
What's so key and interesting about what you just said? Like the perception, right? The perspective that it sounds like many people have, or some people have at least, that like you grow up, this is your culture. It tells you what you can and can't do. And that's how you live.
Yeah.
Now, guess what? That's a choice. And I think the blessing, the blessing of the mixed race experience is, and I firmly believe, and again, thanks to what's going on in our nation with politics and mixed race women in the White House, whether you agree with her politics or not, there's a representation there, and I'm hearing, and I want to briefly shout out, I see here we got Michelle there, right? And Susan, a beautiful acting coach and lovely human beings. I would just want to say that if you are interested, what I'm about to say is how you can contribute and join this movement. But what we're about and what we're here talking is this movement of really being a part of a mixed race women collective where we share, this is what it's like for mixed race people, for women, but specifically, we have a beautiful blessing, and in some ways not better than, but advantage to be able to speak to that. Look, our whole lives, we have been picking and choosing from cultures. Mm-hmm, yeah. Right? You get to say, I get to create, my identity. I define who I am. And no matter you are 100% this race or that race, you're only white, you're only Indian, you're only this, you're only that, like, you say who you are. You
Yes.
know, and I think a lot of times, sometimes people, when they are in one culture or in one race or in one faith, all beautiful things to be fully in present in that, but sometimes they feel like, well, this tells me how to behave. This tells me how to. Yeah, I mean, that's your choice, right? And I think the fact that people in our peer group growing up, right, would say like, well, hold on, what makes you think you can go dance with you know, dance to an Indian song with all these like it, you know, like Indian American women, right?
Mm-hmm.
It just goes to show that it's like, I mean, you were not up there by you coming up there. It was not you trying to say like, hey, I'm Indian or that I want to be. I mean,
and I also want to say that my Desi friends and family never made me feel any type of way or different. Or, I mean, I knew I was different, right? I knew I was not Indian or Pakistani or Bangladeshi background, but like, if I know, it was just so welcoming. I wouldn't say it was like my home, right? Like, still as far as my identity, right? But it was, I did feel like I did belong, but then it was like white students from EHS who had comments and thinking, what, my dancing, how does that?
Because you know what the thing is, a lot of people are pointing out, and I see Mega, thank you for sharing and engaging too, and I'm gonna mention what you're saying, but like, you know, a lot of people are kind of, you know, people are always looking out for who's being fake, who's being phony, right? Who's being real. And so I think a lot of times people, you know, in the defense of like, well, are you pretending? Are you trying to be something you're not? You know, people are always talking about posers. Do you remember like being posers?
Right?
Oh my goodness, you be a poser. You know, you're being fake, whatever. And it's like, I think it's so beautiful, you know, that you chose to embrace a culture that you felt embraced you through the people that embraced you. I think in some ways, and also it's not like cultural, you know, sometimes people will talk about cultural appropriation. It's not like you were going around saying, look, I'm Indian, I'm going to be Indian and I'm doing, and look, and honestly, even if you decided to be like, I love everything about the culture and I'm going to like own it and be it and win it and love it. Like, I mean, who's to stop you? Who's to feel, you know, like that's bad or wrong? You know, people will say different things, but this is where we sort of talk about where a melting pot of our country, the United States, and our world is like, you know, culture is another way to connect. Culture is another way to create community. And we have a lot of people here that we can connect right now because we're talking about Indian culture that we love, or we're talking about the Puerto Rican culture we love, or we're talking about the culture. Everything has a culture. The Edison High culture, right? Our high school culture, our middle school culture, our hometown culture. And I know that Mega was saying that, you know, she thinks that in our parents' defense, right? We love our parents from our different cultures, our parents from different countries. I love my dad from India, my mom from Puerto Rico, your parents too. Like, they want us to keep those cultures going in a country that's new. And what do you think about that, Daniela? Because I totally get that, like, the preservation of language, of culture, of faith, because growing up, like my mom especially, like with faith too, a big part of our culture, right? Like going to church, and my dad with going to mosque. Like, so I'm wondering what that looks like for you, because Mega is also saying, you know, that she feels that sometimes when people don't feel like they have a culture, you know, because everybody does. I think that people are just sometimes they're not sure what it is, or they don't have it defined like this, then perhaps they do feel left out. So they want to make others feel left out. Like, oh, how is it that you have this group that you belong to, but I don't know, like, I'm curious about that, because I feel like I've talked to people, you know, who identify as white that are like, yeah, I mean, I don't really feel like I got a culture, or like it's so long ago, like some European descent, or like US.
What I consider that is that get to know your culture anyway.
Right.
Find a culture for you. Enrich your life. I mean, again, being a mixed race person is always being torn. It's a blessing and a responsibility. I don't have much to comment as far as my parents right now in this conversation, but find a culture. And yeah, I feel like sometimes people culture bash and yet don't know their own culture, or haven't experienced other cultures in other countries. And sometimes it's very hard for me to hear when people say, like, this is the best country in the world, when they're talking about USA. And if you truly honestly feel that, that's great. But have you experienced other cultures? Can we embrace other nations and what they're doing well and how it serves their people? You know, and we wouldn't have to, our culture always doesn't have to be the best, you know, it's something to embrace. And that's the blessing about being mixed race. There's no box for us. There's no box for us.
Yeah.
So I get to define myself, and I get to pick and choose and pull and fuse together, you know, what fits me, what I want to highlight, what I want to represent. It also makes me flexible and open-minded and say, you know what, this is something maybe from my culture that doesn't serve me. I don't have to speak in that way or act in this way, or, you know, and I'm constantly reflecting, you know, it might sound like I'm pointing fingers already in this conversation so far, but I'm constantly reflecting to myself. I was just saying to Mega, you know, I had talked to a hairstylist and I had told her that I cut my hair boy short twice. And the moment it came out of my mouth, you know, what stereotype am I enforcing?
By calling it boy short, you said, right?
And I immediately corrected myself. And I like, you know, in the moment, I'm in the hairstylist seat and I just felt so awkward with myself. And I'm constantly reevaluating. Am I mentioning where people are from? Am I mentioning their color of their skin? Why am I painting this imagery for someone else's mind? What am I trying to, you know, stereotype? And I'm not saying to be colorblind. I know that there is this movement of not being colorblind. And I think there's a place to mention someone's culture or ethnicity. And that's still really hard for me. This phase of my life, it's really hard for me where you mention that and where it is. But it's also really hard for me is when people at the end of my conversation go, what were they? Were they black? Were they white? Were they old? Were they from Camden? Were they, but we just don't, you know, and the imagery again that we're painting for other people, you know, and we don't know where people's friends or families are from, what their experiences are, how they self-identify. And I'm again, pointing the finger back at me. I'm constantly reflecting and being a mixed race person, feeling that you never fit in. I think there's this, I don't know how to say trauma, but I always wanted to be included somewhere. And so my goal is to be inclusive. And, you know, it's this, you're constantly always, if you see someone left out, why are they left out? I gotta connect with them. I know how it is to be two races and bond and mix together. So now I'm gonna reel you into the conversation, and you're gonna be part of our conversation, and you're gonna be family. I'll connect with you some way, you know, and so it's a kind of like it's like a conversation with, why is this person not connected? Why are they not participating in the conversation? They have to be included. I know how it feels to be left out.
You know? I so honor what you're sharing, and everybody got that. You can see those chills. You see all my hair, my beautiful Puerto Rican Indian hair sticking up on my arms, because I get that, you know. And two big things you said, a lot actually, but you said there's no box for us.
No.
Literally on standardized tests, there's no box for us, right? At least maybe that's changed now, but literally it's like it is in living in the world of the other. Right? Or the other, or perhaps the mixed race, or, you know, now more recently, there's things like multi-ethnic, multiracial box. I'm like, I was like, that's nice. That's kind of cool. Okay. I guess I'll check that one. What else do you want to know? Okay. You're just going to blanket it, you know, but I appreciate it. It's a start, but I really get what you're speaking to about inclusion, right? This inclusivity, right? Really being the space for inclusion, being that clearing where you're like, around me, I want to show up like everybody's welcome. And I really get like, and I want to feel welcome, because I get what it's like to not feel like I fully belong. Fully belong, right? Because right. And I want to thank, I know we've got several folks watching, and I want to thank, you know, those folks that have been in our joint upbringing experience, like, you know, in middle school, in high school, in Edison, New Jersey, very diverse hometown with, like, you know, I mean, any color, race, I feel like you name it, we had it, and some percentage, to be honest. Right? And in our classes, in our different leveled classes, you know, I would see I felt blessed. I was in a lot of honors classes personally, and it was mostly you either were white or Desi. And I think I might have been the one or two of some of the token Latinas here and there. And then maybe we had a token Black person or two. And then, in some other classes with different levels. And that's, speaking of education, a whole different story. Then in our gym classes, I feel like I would see more people, and then I would maybe see more Black people, then maybe see more Latinos. Everybody's experience was different at Edison, depending on where you're at. But I really get that all along, a lot of my identity formation, it sounds like yours too, was in that space of like, how do I get along with people and where do I belong? And I've mentioned it, and I said it in our first episode, and I'll probably say it in everyone, that I remember the birth of Guju Rican. The identity and the name that I feel like I created at 14 years old to make sense of, to own and really praise and feel good about my mixed race identity, and have a way that I could feel like I could control it, I could own it, I could put a label on it, because people are labeling left and right, to really be able to be like, guess what? People are like, what are you? Well, are you? I'll be like, you know what? I'm a Guju Rican. Yeah, any questions? Literally, and I mean, maybe that's actually how I felt inside. I think I would feel like, there's so many people with so much Puerto Rican pride, 100%, or with Desi pride, 100%. And I love that. But guess what? Like, for me, sometimes it would feel in most insecure places like, oh man, like I want to represent and embrace it, but I don't want you to look at me and go, girl, you're not all there. You're not 100%. Because who are you to tell me that, right? Like, it's tricky. It's tricky to really want to be fully embraced in one culture, fully embrace another, and get that. Guess what? Maybe we're not born to fit in somewhere. Maybe we're born to stand out and fit in everywhere. We belong in the world, right? Everywhere. So what do you think? Because I feel like I'm hearing a lot about what you're saying and how that resonates.
Or, let's just embrace your Puerto Rican side. Like, let's Indian.
Yeah, I like how we went. Let's just honor this right now. No. And I want to ask you, since we're here, since it's right there. Yeah. I just want to put it as right there. Yeah. When people start to say, because something else I heard in what you're saying is that people love to figure each other out, right? Culture, race, what's up with her eyebrows, or whatever they want to figure out, right? Like people, like you said, would they walk away? I thought I was moved when you said, we walk away and go, oh, what is she? Where do you think she's from? What do you think's going on with her? Whether it could be mental health, it could be emotional health, whatever, right? People like to analyze and figure each other out. That being said, I feel like I would experience growing up in life, and I would, maybe I'd be really calm or nice or sweet and studious, and people would be like, that's that good Indian girl in you. And I'd be like, wait, hold on, I'm sorry. Do you have the textbook on that? I at your face. This is the trigger. I had to pull it though. And then at the same time, if I get like this, or I get feisty, or I get feisty again, by the way, very interpretation, but I get more fiery, and people like,
that's that Puerto Rican side in you.
That's that Puerto Rican in you, girl. There it is.
That's a sangre. That's a sangre.
Look at it right now. We're about to turn it up. We're lighting up. Look right now. Everybody, Facebook, like YouTube, Twitter, we're lighting. It's the Puerto Ricans right now. Right now, the Puerto Ricans are lighting it up. No, come on. Yes, let's own it. We're Puerto Rican, and you're Italian American, and I'm Indian, and we're from New Jersey, and we're from Edison. Any other questions? We're women. We're cute women that were born in the 80s. Like, there's so many ways to identify who you are. So I just want to say that, this is not to embrace or call it a superior race by any means, that by being mixed race, but it is really to embrace and have the space, the platform to speak that, like, as mixed race women, you're hearing it here live. There has been a very distinct way that we've experienced our upbringing, our lives, our childhood. And I want to let all the ladies listening and anyone listening know that, like, if this resonates with you, whether you're mixed race or not, but especially if you are, and whether you're a woman or not, but especially if you are mixed race woman, that you're not alone. We're not alone. I have always felt that, thanks to, Daniela, I don't think we ever really fully focus on it so much. But I think as we got older and I realized, if I feel like I connect the dots backwards, a lot of our connections to the types of things we're interested into our personal growth, our transformation, our health, our wellness, our spirituality, our friends, family, a lot of it, you know. I mean, we could be similar personalities, but I also do feel like our similar exposures and mixed race experiences have allowed us in some ways to have that sisterhood, you know, and connect. Cause like,
Totally.
you know, so, well, so that being said though, like, you know, I'm really grateful you are here. You're speaking. People love you. We got 100 folks, like, people, 100 folks like out there, like acknowledging you, loving your face, loving your space, loving your hair, loving everything you represent. So I want talking about connecting with you. This space is for us to talk about the mixed race experience as women, but also like to connect and get to know you. So if there's anything else you want to say about your upbringing, feel free. But we also want to really, you know, it's to bring up, we've brought up some cathartic things, we've brought up some triggers, but it's also to really celebrate, right? So I would love if we could spend this time too, you know, in like, I would love to hear things that you celebrate about your mixed race experience, right? And also things that you're celebrating right now in your life, like about you. And anyone who has any other questions or comments, feel free to continue to like engage, chat. We love the love. So what do you want to say, Daniela, about that?
Well, I was also, you know, you had asked where I'm originally from. You know, I was born in Perth Amboy, raised in Edison.
Right.
And I constantly would just reflect back when my parents decided to make that move, you know, and what a blessing that was. Yeah, from Perth
Amboy. By the way, for people watching that don't know, it's like they're next door. They're like two towns. It's like they're like one town next to the other practically, right? It's like 10 minutes away. Yeah.
And just like, in recent years, I had asked my mom, well, I know that we moved from Perth Amboy to Edison for a better education. Mm-hmm. But she astounded me. She said, well, it wasn't just for a better education. It was to be around a more diverse population.
Hey.
I know. And I think about it daily, how being mixed race is just a blessing and just the way that you can just delight in anybody's culture, you know? You know, I don't know, delight in my own culture, delight in other people's culture. It's just to fuse it all together, to learn. It's just so, it enriches your life. And then I moved on to Temple, right? So I moved on to Temple University after I graduated high school and just, again, celebrating diversity.
That is so, I love how, I really appreciate that, like between, you know, being raised, like, you know, born in, for us being born, I mean, we were raised in Edison, New Jersey, a very diverse, like, hometown that we were really exposed to different languages and cultures and faiths and human beings in our public school system and our learning. It sounds like that then continued through your time at Temple University, right? And I know you have Latin American studies support and love and folks that really love you here. And I'm so grateful that they have shared with you love and like those watching to really, we shout you out. Like, what was that like there? You chose, it sounds like you chose to really focus on your Latin American studies as this Rick Italian or whatever else you want to call it, right? So can you tell us about that?
Yeah. I feel like I found home when I went to Temple, you know, after going through, I don't know how many different programs, you know, trying to figure what program would be best for me to study. I ended up with Spanish and then geography and urban studies and then a minor in Latin studies. Yeah. And it just
notice all things that really have to do with getting to know like your surroundings, your environment, your culture, your world, right? Latin American studies, culture, geography, world, right? Urban studies, right? Like, I sometimes I think these things are not an accident or
no. I enjoyed studying these programs.
Yeah.
And shout out to Ron Webb, who is the director of Latin American Studies at Temple, and that he's had always towards me as a student and supporting me and listening to my ideas. And I think he also knew that, you know, I had my own internal dialogue about being mixed race. And actually there was Latin American Studies semester. It's like a Spanish intensive language. And I went to Mexico for 10 days and you lived with a family from Mexico. And I just remember.
You did that?
I did that. Yeah, I did that.
In Mexico?
It was in Mexico, and it was Yucatan. It was in Mérida.
Mérida. Okay, cool.
Yes. Had the time of my life. I loved it. Loved Mexico. And I just remember having a conversation about my identity. I'm on the bus, and I'm amongst the other students
in Mexico.
Yeah, in Mexico. I'm on the bus with other students in the program from Temple, right? And I hear a lot of like English chatter, and I'm like joining in the English, speaking conversation in English, and we're really supposed to be speaking Spanish, right? And I just remember telling myself, this is it. This is it. You're not going to be afraid any longer about your identity. Tú vas a hablar como tú vas a hablar, y ya.
Like yes, you were like Spanish on.
Yeah. And then I just remember all the professors like loving to speak with me in Spanish, and I felt like I almost was like one or two learning a language and just speaking however I was going to speak and be corrected however I was going to be corrected, and just, but it wasn't just a moment to embark on my Spanish language, because I had been doing Spanish language since middle school and high school, and there wasn't really much progress. It was a moment to just leave la pena. Like, I was not going to feel ashamed about who I was with my Spanish as a half Puerto Rican individual. And I was going to speak however I was going to speak. And it was like such a liberating moment to be in Merida. It's beautiful. It's warm. The people are warm. The culture is warm. And I just was like, yeah, I'm just going to speak however I'm going to speak. And
so you had a concern with like how it was going to sound in Merida, in Mexico, your Spanish, because for those of you that, like any culture, if you are in any culture and you know a language, that when you hear people speak it, you can kind of tell, like, okay, is that legit Gujarati? Is that like, did you learn it in the States? Is that a legit, like, is that Spanish something that you grew up speaking? Is this a Puerto Rican Spanish? Is this a Tefeo? Is it a Spaniard Spanish? Is it a Mexican Spanish? Do you know the slang? Do you know the words? So I get that. As someone who then also pursued a Spanish teaching in language interpretation, translation, journalism lifestyle, right? Like you had to be on it. You had to get it good. You had to get it precise. So what was it like then for you? Like, sounds like you went for it. You just had to create the confidence to.
Yeah. And like I said, I feel like at Temple University, I really did find like my home. Like, I was around other people who were white, who were learning the Spanish language. I was around Hispanics who hadn't learned Spanish either, or maybe just wanted to learn how to read and write, or just wanted to experience their culture even more, or another part of Latin America. Like, it felt like I really belonged once I had gone to Temple. Like, I didn't have to question my identity. I was naked about my identity. I'm half white, I'm half Puerto Rican, and I'm learning Spanish, and I'm going to also study Latin American studies, and I'm going to go to Mexico, and I'm just going to speak the language. And yeah, so it was a really liberating moment. And I also want to say that once I graduated college, my Spanish language skills have always been used in all my employment so far. And I just know that there are Hispanics who have the same story going around. Like, yeah, I always wanted to learn Spanish, but I just understand it. There's again that sort of this shame. Your first generation, second generation, you lost the language. You don't. But just go for it. When people are like, I bought Rosetta Stone and I'm taking ESL classes but just go for it. Just go for it. Like, leave your identity behind and just, not altogether. It's always there. But go for it.
But there is something to be said too, right? Like, there's something really beautiful, like, to be said for what you're saying. Like, you learn Spanish in Mexico, right, through Temple University, right? This Puerto Rican Italian woman. And, you could have gone to Puerto Rico. You could have gone to Spain. It doesn't matter. You went to Mexico. You got in there. You learned it. And I think what's really beautiful is that, that was a key. Again, language is a key. It was access for you. It was access to your Spanish-speaking community, right?
Yeah.
You learned it, but it was access for you to I really hear like a certain level of like validation. Right? Like, maybe not even exactly what you saw out, but there's something beautiful. It's validating to feel like, wow, now I have the tools and I have the skills to really embrace and connect with other Latinos like me, because I am Latina, at least partially. But the point is, I am. The point is, the blood is in here. The point is and even if there was no blood, but your mom was raised, whatever, right? You were raised there, or you had touched ground there and lived there for a period of time. The point is that was a culture that you chose to identify, amplify, connect to, right? So I love that.
And I just want to speak on, like, again, as as humans, we have the responsibility to create the identity that we have for ourselves. And I know there's people who are mixed race who identify with maybe just one of the two or three, whatever, how many races.
Good point to speak to that. I see that. I do see that.
And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. That doesn't mean you're less than or more than, but it's our responsibility to be empowered in our identity and nudge or remind people like, no, this is who I am, I don't have to be one or the other. I could be both. I could be neither if I want to. I have that choice. And we know that constantly we're being perceived and people are identifying us in their language, but we can remind, no, this is who I am. This is who I've chose to be. Yo soy la nueva today. And I could be something else tomorrow.
and that's actually key. And that's something that I think a lot of humanity sometimes gets stuck in. We feel like, leaving race aside, I felt like I've been in this job for 10 years. If I've been doing the same job, I got to keep doing the same job, or this is the career I chose. So that's it. Oops. And it looks like that in relationships too, right? Like, I feel like I'm here. This is what it is. This is how it's got to, in every moment we choose who we are, right? In this present moment, we choose who we are. And needless to say, right? But it's a beautiful power that we have as human beings, and we create our identities, we create our experiences, we've created this moment. And I'm wondering right now, to that point, I know as a mixed race woman, sometimes that beautiful level of freedom and flexibility is like, all right, so who do I want to be right now? I have a little, for those watching that may know Daniela a little bit about me, right? I was born and raised just alongside Daniela, and a mixed race girl, in Edison, New Jersey, and studied Spanish translation, interpretation, and journalism in Rutgers, and lived in Spain. Again, that was in my ancestry back there. And I thought, what? Similar to you, Daniela, really look to go, I want to, I've been studying Spanish throughout school. I really want to unlock the key and embrace this, and really at Rutgers and in Valencia, really develop the tools so I can connect to this loving, wonderful, beautiful Latino community. Spanish is spoken in 20 plus, I think 22 countries, right? And beyond. And so, but for a long time, it's funny because I actually felt growing up in Edison that a lot of my Indian background was something that I felt thanks to folks like Mega who's watching and other amazing Desi friends, I felt, and by the way, India, Edison is has a little India, Oak Tree Road, for those of you that are not familiar with it. For those of you that are, what we're talking about, you got to get there. It's like walking onto a street in India and it's beautiful. It's probably the closest you can get in the United States. And so when you're there, I felt really validated in the Indian experience in Edison, thanks to you watching the friends of that. I felt like I kind of connected the Hindi, the Gujarati, the Bollywood dances, the Garbas, all of that stuff. And then it was finally actually moving to LA. Actually, it was, moving to Spain, studying Spanish, moving to LA, that I felt like in my latter part of my life, even, dating and talking to people speaking Spanish, that I really got I'm embracing my Latina side too. With that being said, I'm really curious whether it's, you want to speak to relationship, or you want to speak to career, or anything else, how have you seen, what are you doing now? What do you want to do now? I know that you are also kind of in transition and discovering for yourself, but if there's anything you want to say about that, either relationships or, the evolving of how you identify to your both cultures or your future. I'd love to hear all of those things as we're wrapping up. What do you want to say?
My actual biggest concern is my son, right? He's 3, Antonio.
You have a son. That's a big kid now.
Yeah, Antonio. And he's still really young. I'm sure there's identity shaping, but
because what's his background? He has a mixed race background, correct?
Yes, so. He's half Mexican, half Italian American, and half Puerto Rican. Oh, sorry.
Yes.
Let's shut up. Half Puerto Rican. I'm sorry. Half Mexican, a quarter Puerto Rican and a quarter Italian American.
Yes, that mixed race boy. We love him.
That's so funny. And so we don't live in the most diverse area currently in South Jersey, but there was a day of embracing culture, and I sent him to school with a pie chart, just with that, and just like to represent, he is a mixed race boy at in a school district that's not very diverse. So it is really important about, what his identity, how he's going to create his own identity, and like, how a hands-off approach about however he's going to create himself and whoever he's going to be.
Yeah. So we love Antonio. That's awesome. And so actually, this is so perfect, right? Because there's such a joy. Another level of your identity, I know in most recent times, is mom. Your mom. So, as a mixed race woman with your experience, and now you have, like we mentioned, right? You have this mixed race son, Mexican, Puerto Rican, Italian American, beautiful bundle of joy. What do you hope for? What do you wish for what do you want? What do you declare? What do you see for the now and the future for the mixed race community, for the world, for women still, since we're talking about that? What do you see? Or what do you want?
I just see more of a platform. I see more of a voice. I mean, we're inevitably becoming more and more mixed, and I think that's beautiful. I think that's why there's New York City, you think of California, these places that thrive. It's like diversity. It's inevitable. It's needed to survive, I'm excited to see how my son in the future years is going to develop his own identity. And I would love to delight with him in showing him each culture equally, and, where he's going to take it from there. And me too. It's going to be a learning experience. You can never stop learning about your culture, even if you're only like one race. There's just so much mixed race in the background. My grandfather was Calabrese. That's the peninsula of Italy. I mean, that's right there near Africa. That's there's so many empires that have taken over, and leaders, and there's just so much diversity. And I look forward to delighting and teaching him and embracing and traveling and maybe different citizenships and things like that with him in the near future.
That is so beautiful. And I think it's so wonderful what you said, right? That we can continuously learn and honestly grow and actually create our cultures for people watching and reflecting too, you have one culture, or maybe you don't really resonate with what your culture is. Maybe you were born and raised in New Jersey or in a certain state. It's like, whatever that is, embrace it. Right? Whatever that is, embrace it, learn it, love it. And sometimes, to your point, Daniela, by living and loving and learning other cultures too, right? By traveling abroad, by hearing conversations like this about different people, it kind of actually really it sounds like it really helps us appreciate and embrace like the diversity that exists and what different people go through, but really coming back home to yourself and also appreciate what you have. Whatever it is, whatever it is, right? Whatever it is and whatever it isn't, just like to own it and to love it,
Other cultures enhance your own culture.
Yeah.
There's something to be said about that. And, currently something I am working on, especially during these times in the US, is just being more inclusive. Being that example of inclusivity, even if others might not want to be inclusive,
I love that. And I think that is like beautiful. Like that honestly, if someone could watch this whole thing and take away one thing from that, from this conversation, I would love, and I hear that you say this too, that if someone could really get that, wow, like everyone is going through something, everyone has had an experience, everyone has a story.
Everyone's an expert in something that we don't know.
Exactly. There's always opportunity to learn. And especially in our mixed race women's experiences, but every single person, right? Like there's always something to really learn and embrace. And everyone has felt left out at one point. Everyone has felt alone at some point. Yeah. And, as a human beings, a humanity, as a human family, whatever we can do to just choose to be more inclusive, as Daniela said it best, like that's.
Did you see Megan's comment?
Yeah.
Her latest comment, she said, "By the way, we thought it was so cool that you ladies were mixed race."
Oh,
Yeah, I know that makes my heart sing.
that makes my,
It's
you
so
know,
funny.
oh my God.
It's like I never questioned it, but then to have someone hear it, it like I know kind of it
My
like
heart.
because
My heart is skipping because you know what? It's really nice to hear that all these like 10, 15 years later, because the thing is, here we are, and Megan's probably like, oh, girls, we didn't know you were like going through that whole, this is what was going on. But, you know, everybody has teenagers, they have their insecurities and stuff. And meanwhile, that's the thing. But that's the thing. On the outside, what is so cool and chill and awesome, which is, yes, we acknowledge that too. I'm sure there's times that we really loved it. I loved playing volleyball for charity and having Gujarican on my back. I felt
I had an Oreo that Mega had made for me. That's so identical.
Yes! Oreo, so much love to Mega. Clearly, you are a key link for us here. But then I really was like, yeah, no, it made a difference. You know, we love to be honored that way, but meanwhile, you know, just like anyone has their insecurities, this is what mixed race women's insecurities can look like.
Yeah, no,
and
but I would say that even though that they wanted us to feel like that we belonged, right? Never that we felt like, you know, internally we had like, oh, we might not fit in or whatever. But I felt like I did belong with the Desi community, but it's just like icing on the cake to then hear, you know, not only did you belong, we thought it was cool. And
yes, not only we thought that's great. Yeah, it was really cool. And now that I say that, that's a great thing to kind of end off on. And thanks, Mega, again for that, because I realized too, for as many times as it was like, that's the Puerto Rican in you, or that's you, or that's Indian.
You're young. Is it not cool to be mixed race? But then to hear someone years later tell you it was cool.
So it was just, I just really appreciate that, because super sweet, because thanks to great, beautiful friends and family, Edison community, upbringing, or Temple community, Rutgers, Spain, Mexico, right? Husbands, parents, kids, like, you know, thanks to the people in our lives, we really appreciate, so while we're here, since we also have all these mutual friends in common, we really appreciate you and honor you for appreciating us and allowing us to share our story with you today by tuning in and watching. And so whether you're watching this live or you catch the replay, please share some love. Tell us what you think. And if you are a mixed race woman, I have a few folks that have already dropped in the chat. Count me in. I am so excited and more than happy and loving. First thing you need to do is, going to write it really quick, is to find the mixed race. I'm typing it right now. Mixed race women collective. Daniela is in it. Our guest from last week, Therese is in it. If you find this group, Mixed Race Women Collective, if you request to join, I'll have a quick chat with you, and we will love to include you and actually have you next on this series. Again, thanks to Daniela, chatting with Daniela, this inspiration. We love you. We're excited to honor each other in our sisterhood and get to know one another and honor and lift up our voices. So I hope that you all have a beautiful Friday the 13th. Such a 2020. Hey,
thank you.
Have a great weekend, everybody. Lots of love. Bye, girl. See you. Talk to you soon.